This is what an emerging and more emboldened opposition to this Musk-Trump agenda looks like. Today, top Democrats using their powers to grind the Senate to a halt over selected Trump nominees. I'm going to show you the Senate floor right now as this has continued in the midst of the Democrats seizing the floor agenda for 30 hours, trying to yoke Elon Musk's controversial plans to President Trump and some of these pending nominees, including a Project 2025 leader who Donald Trump tapped to now run the nation's budget. That's a key perch if you want to implement Project 2025 across the country, even as candidate Trump famously campaigned by claiming to disavow the 2025 governing plan, while Democrats hammered this today.
I have nothing to do with Project 2025.
He is Donald Trump's most dangerous nominee.
Behind every one of these budget lines are people.
This man, Russell Vought, and it is our job to say, stop.
People who will be hurt if the president and Mr. Vought get their way.
Vought has shown complete disregard for democratic institutions.
Vought has said we live in a, quote, post-constitutional time. That's what he believes we're in. Do my colleagues agree with that?
This is, however, a constitutional time. Trump's push to issue those many orders that go beyond his powers and have been overruled by the Constitution have actually drawn attention to the constitutional time we're living in, to quote Senator Murray there, to the limits on any president's power. It's drawn attention to how the Constitution and courts also guide this nation, not just one politician holding executive orders that now some of them are quite ceremonial or more like a little symbolic antique of a couple of days of a presidency, because as the headlines show, they have been blocked, stopped in their tracks. The Constitution is part of what rules this country, not one politician. You can see that contrast. It's unfolded fast because some of Trump's actions were not close calls. I've told you we've covered and lived together through cases that took years because they were complicated and close, and they went all the way to Supreme Court. This is not that. His lawyers and aides could have seen these headlines coming. They surely know the Constitution is above politicians on key issues. No politician can cancel the First or 14th Amendment. It's actually the opposite. Those exist to constrain politicians from abusing power. And if this sounds like a little bit of a throwback history lesson or a little bit of law school, this is news right now, I assure you, because of rulings like this today. Another judge rebuking Trump for viewing law as an impediment, something to ignore, in a ruling reiterating something we know, that the Constitution's citizenship language is final. It overrides and overpowers any effort by a president, including this one, to cancel it. With the judge noting, this is not something which the government may play policy games with. Quote, if the government, that's a reference to President Trump, wants to change the exceptional American grant of birthright citizenship, it needs to amend the Constitution itself. It's actually the third judge in a row to do so, ruling against and thwarting Trump's clearly unlawful claim that he would just personally alter the Constitution's definition of citizenship. Another judge ruling today against a Musk effort, pausing that unelected billionaire's demand that federal workers have to quit on his terms. Elon Musk had announced a kind of made-up deadline that he said was for workers to quit and take a buyout. And you can see how perception can shape reality when the government wages war on both law and facts. Because some people might have thought, when announced this way amidst all this chaos, that it was a real deadline, that it might be the best deal as a federal worker they could come up with if they were going to be ousted anyway. But tonight, I could show you a different reality coming into view. There actually is no deadline tonight because the U.S. government is not following one. Musk said it. The government said, no, thank you. That's not how this works. And it will take longer to hash out. So this may be a power Musk does not have, certainly not right now tonight. And the courts and the Congress also govern this country. They may have a different tack on how workers are paid, or if there are departing workers, what they get. There is a normal and orderly way to do this. Sometimes the federal workforce grows and shrinks in different departments for different priorities. That is okay. And if the Republicans win an election and plan to, through Congress and law, scale back the federal workforce within the rules in the Constitution, that is okay. You could say that's what they were elected to do. In these first 2 weeks, though, President Trump has shown little interest in doing those things on an orderly or legal basis with the Congress. Elon Musk, clearly not. He is rushing for his power, even as it's narrowed by another federal judge who is limiting how much of the Treasury data that Musk seeks, how much he can get. So just right there, it's a lot. Now, what is going on? If I can try to just jump through all of these rulings and these other developments, and of course I haven't hit everything yet. What's going on with all of this? Well, I think there are signs that some of this ongoing blitz that we're experiencing, this Musk-Trump approach, is deliberately designed to get some chaos and try to get results out of that. You've probably heard the shorthand for that type of strategy. People talk about flooding the zone or shock and awe or deliberate distraction and then move the line for what is shocking or acceptable and get something out of that. Some people say it's Donald Trump's negotiating style mixed with the show, quote unquote. There may be aspects of that, but it is not all three-dimensional chess, as we have noted in our coverage, because we've seen errors and mistakes and incompetence. And it's also clear when it comes to what I just mentioned with Elon Musk, some other parts of this are just the classic shoot-first approach. And that's an old kind of cliched posture for a reason. It's long been criticized. It's almost automatically bad if you say someone's shooting first, because it's dangerous. Duh. It's rarely strategic. And when you see people do this in real life, not the movies, it's often people who have kind of a supposed self-proclaimed tough type persona. And then it turns out some of them are not that tough or shrewd at all. The loud, brash, and often failing moves here are also yielding their own pushback, which is part of the story, part of what's happening. There are anti-MAGA and anti-Elon Musk's protests happening around the country with signs against Elon Musk. He is finding that his standing is, in this country at least, very polarized. He might be embraced on part of the right, but he is also widely opposed around the country. And remember, he has business interests, he has consumer-facing products. He is seeing these signs against him. While the architect of Donald Trump's first winning campaign, Steve Bannon, is coming at Musk from a different vantage point, arguing that Musk is a kind of phony imposter out for himself, who's only pretending to back Trump's populist agenda, when in fact, Bannon argues Musk is about Musk and his tech and his money. Quote, he's not a populist. He's in this group of hardcore techno-federalists, Bannon told the New York Times. And while there's surely some politics here, the rivalry might be about access to Trump or who's positioned to carry the MAGA flame forward, we can also see something kind of interesting. Steve Bannon's listed concerns overlap with some of what the Democratic leaders are saying and some of what the general public is concerned about. So it may be strange bedfellows that work against Musk, while this type of ongoing conflict and controversy and media attention could hurt Musk's relationship with Trump. I remind you of Exhibit A Time magazine covered, which Bannon learned is how complicated it can be to work for Donald Trump, even at a high level, and also get your own press and attention. Ultimately, Bannon's press got in the way of his power in the Trump White House, for those who want to go down memory lane. Now, Musk just said to his allies this week the time is short, that they've got to do this stuff now and fast, and it might be their, quote, only opportunity. Could be just more rhetoric from someone who is skilled at marketing and rhetoric in his own way. Could also be the politically savvy billionaire understands what I just mentioned, that there is a pickle here of working through Trump through his power and prestige when he is himself a jealous co-pilot. Musk trying to barrel ahead quickly. He wants the data for millions of federal employees. He's invading multiple agencies, even though he's not a cabinet leader for any one of them, rushing to mess with or get data about what are very popular healthcare programs, including for seniors, dispatching his own teams, not Trump's, to pressure labor and CDC officials. And you'll notice a theme here I want to draw your attention to, because the press apparently can matter. We've seen the press, the revelations, and even the courts respond to what we're learning. As always, we're indebted to a lot of our colleagues in print and other fields who are digging this stuff up. Here, the Post reporting on his advisory group securing and wanting to get a hold of, quote, sensitive data. Same deal over at Veterans Affairs, where Musk wants access to their computer systems. That's courtesy of some military.com reporting. We can't cover everything, nobody can, but we're zeroing in on some aspects of this to look at the consequences. And then you have how Elon Musk has long cultivated a bad boy billionaire aura, even before he was this interested in American politics or the enrichment of his companies through American politics. Like Donald Trump, Musk has some fans who really like that idea or rep that he has cultivated, the idea of his life and lifestyle and living like him. There's a song, DDG with Gunna, that sings, "A whole lot of money in the safe, don't worry about us. This smoke gonna take me straight to space, like I'm Elon Musk." Now, the simple idea is that it sounds like it could be wild or fun to live like Elon Musk. And that could be. It's a free country. You can imagine that or want that life. But remember, that's about living like the cartoon imagined hype of being Elon Musk, of being that rich, and of going to space. But the more pertinent question, in reality, not fiction, is what about living under Elon Musk in a world where he takes your job and your data, and he certainly doesn't have extra seats for you to join him in space. More likely, you'll be in line for unemployment while he will use your tax dollars to fund another one of his crypto self-enrichment schemes and then posts online that it's all a big joke. Well, who is the joke on? Is that what people want? And is it what they voted for?